Welcome to Gilli Pong Analysis. Now we're going to continue with our alchemical deep dive. We're just going to go straight through it. This is part 4 of a series where we're going into The Call of Fire by Lubicz. Schwaller de Lubicz. Symbolist Egyptology and the Temple of Man. In 1934, the Lubicz set out on the Mediterranean on a hydrodynamic yacht designed by Schwaller. In the year, they settled on the Spanish island of Majorca, in a hospice dating to the time of Ramon Lull, 1232 to 1315. It's a Friday, so we're going to thank the alchemists for creating beer way before science was created. And now they're in Majorca having a beer like us probably back then. And a period of isolation ensued. In 1936, however, with the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War, the Lubicz were forced to move on, and their affinities drew them to Egypt, where they would remain for the next 15 years. In Egypt, Schwaller had a crucial impression that crystallized the connection between Egyptian civilization and the Pythagorean Hermetic tradition, thereby bringing his alchemical guest directly into contact with its perceived pharaonic sources. The experience occurred in 1936 in the tomb of Ramses IX, where Schwaller beheld an Osirian mural depicting Ka-Mut-Tef, the bull of his mother. Here, the pharaoh, let's take a look at it. Yeah. So this is the mural he was watching. Maybe we should read the text here. In this image, Schwaller saw the Pythagorean principle of triunity. In the Egyptian theology, Ka, bull, spirit, indicates the active masculine force in the triad. Mut, the mother, represents the feminine receptive force, while the child or son represents the product. The paradox that binds the three aspects of this lineage into a triangular unity lies in the fact that the son, by recapitulating, indeed reincarnating his father, becomes thereby the bull, spirit and inseminator of his mother. In short, he is the father of himself, rather than being a simple product. He exists both in a primary state before the separation, or differentiation into gendered polarity, male-female, and in an ultimate state, after the two poles have been differentiated and then recombined, the alchemical conjunctio or cohabitation. This is reproduced from René Aor de Lubicz, The Temple of Man, a pet of the south of at Luxor. All right. Here the pharaoh is shown the hypotenuse. Here the pharaoh is shown as the hypotenuse of the right-angled triangle, simultaneously embodying both the masculine generative and the feminine gestative. The masculine generative and the feminine gestative power of the cosmos. This theme, in which an agent becomes both the father and the mother of itself, lay at the heart of his alchemical metaphysics, the Trinitarian theory of sulfur, mercury, salt. From that moment on, Schwaller knew he had found the true symbolic of his magnum opus, Le Temple de l'Homme, the Temple of Man, 1957 to 8. And I actually seem to have it here. So this is the book here. You can just find it online. Temple in Man. And here it is. Sacred Architecture and the Perfect Man by René Schwaller de Lubicz. Translated by Robert and Deborah Lawler. Illustrated by Lucy Lamy, his stepdaughter. You can find this. I'll probably link this PDF in the chat here, or in the description. Okay, a work that gestated over a dozen years of on-site measurement, decipherment, and study of the temple of Amen Emopet at Luxor, Upper Egypt, confirming for Schwaller that this lineage was indeed the font of the Hermetic, Pythagorean, and alchemical tradition, of which he was already a seasoned and practicing adept. In order to devote himself to this tradition, Schwaller and his entourage set themselves up in a wing of the Winter Palace on the Nile at Luxor, where over a period of 12 years he was able to live in daily contact with Egyptian temples. Schwaller's alchemical reading of the French cathedrals, long understood as architectonic images of Christ, hermetically disposed him to approach the New Kingdom Egyptian temple as a codification of the incarnation of God as man. The mystery of the anthropokosmos against the fine grain of conventional Egyptology. Yeah, this was against the fine grain of a conventional Egyptology. Schwaller provided an elaborate symbolic reading of the temple of Amen Emopet. He maintained that the foundational teaching underpinning every symbolic detail of the temple, governing and shaping its entire structure at every level, from its foundation and its axis to its material substances and its form, was the doctrine of the anthropokosmos. In no uncertain terms, Schwaller calls the temple at Luxor the Temple of Man. This is not merely because of the structure of the temple could be correlated with the biometrical proportion of the royal corpus, the image of the pharaoh, but because the Egyptian divine temple itself, like the pharaoh, is the structure that supports the incarnation of divinity. The temple of man corporifies the divine functions and principles, neteru, both as a physical edifice created according to divine proportions of mnemonic growth, and literally through the embodiment of the divine in man, which was in fact the raison d'être of Luxor Temple. For Schwaller, human physiology is a physical product of metaphysical principles, such as the organs of human perception, from the physical to the subtle, are at the same time the instruments of divine self-perception. Overall, Schwaller emphasized how a profound anthropocosmic philosophy was encoded in every physical aspect of the construction of the Egyptian divine temple, and, more than this, that a profoundly intuitive a rational intelligence superior to our own divisive rationalism lay at the heart of Egyptian civilization. These views clashed dramatically with the attitudes of contemporary Egyptology. Despite this, the sheer gravity of Schwaller's research, the compelling originality of his interpretations, attract a significantly high calibre of support from both the academic and artistic communities. Schwaller's key associates during this period became known as Le Groupe de Luxor, not to be confused with the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor. Among others, Luxor Group was comprised of Egyptologist Alexandre Viril, architect Clement Robichon, and the official guardian of the Valley of the Kings, Alexandre Stoppeler. The Groupe de Luxor supported and participated with Schwaller in the generally unknown but virulent polemic that transpired during this period between the symbolist approach to Egyptology, represented by Schwaller and Varil, and the hostile climate of conservative Egyptology, headed by the highly influential Catholic abbot, archaeologist, and director of Egyptian antiques in Cairo, Etienne Drioton. In 1949, avant-garde dramatist and filmmaker Jean Cocteau entered this milieu, and perceiving the significance of the symbolist method, popularized de Lubitz's cause on the French literary media. Figures such as André Rousseau, Raoul Jahan, Pierre Rampach, and François Hebert Stevens followed suit, and as a result of this, Schwaller would be invited to present at André Breton's Congress of Symbolistes, 1956 to 1959, upon his return to France. Although scholars such as Arpak Mekitarian called for a balanced appraisal of the actual evidence to resolve the impasse, the appeal was treated with a front of silence. Ultimately, despite being reviewed and published in the most prestigious of Egyptological journals, Schwaller's work was tacitly ignored by mainstream Egyptology. Tragically, in 1951, Alexander Varil died in a car accident, and without the support of their chief academic spokesperson, the symbolists were forced to secede. Notable works published by the symbolists during this period include Varil's Dissertation sur un style pharaonique, Desertion in the Pharaonic Stele, 1946, alongside two short works by Schwaller, Le Temple dans l'Homme, The Temple in Man, 1949, a short preface to the three-volume Magnus Opus of 1957, and De Symbole et de la Symbolique, on Symbol and Symbology, 1951, in which Schwaller articulates his concepts of symbolic. Immortal mineral remains. The Lubitzes returned to France in the early 1950s, retiring to Mass to Cocagno at Plan de Grace. In 1952, on the day of St. John the Baptist, Schwaller penned an intriguing text entitled Verbe Nature, Nature Word, Nature Word, perhaps one of his most deeply revealing works. This subtitle of the work is a long French thing, which is Some Responses from Nature and Her Sages to the Question of the Author, Spokesperson of the Unknown. Bearing the distinct stamp of Schwaller's mysterious daimon, the premise of the text is the transcription of a series of answers given by nature and her sages to questions posed but not recorded by Schwaller. It is thus composed solely of responses. One of the more important features of the text is the insight it gives into Schwaller's broader theories of biological and spiritual transmutation. Nature Word makes the startling claim that there is a fixed alchemical salt, an immortal mineral nucleus, that neither fire nor putrefaction can destroy, residing in the human femur. Here's a picture. Ischia moriendo renascor. Bonvin and Phoenix represent the palingenesis of the vegetable and animal kingdoms from their mineral foundation. For Schwaller, the human femur, the largest bone in the body, was the repository of the fixed alchemical salt. The immortal mineral remains that neither fire nor putrefaction can destroy, the last in corruption and the first in generation, steep. The incorruptible ashes or salts were regarded by Schwaller as the passive register that preserved an entity-acquired consciousness, and the agent of all mutations between kingdoms and species. Bearing the distinct stamp of Schwaller's mysterious diamond, the premise of the text is the transcription of a series of answers given by nature and her sages to question posed but not recorded by Schwaller. It is thus composed solely of responses. One of the more important features of the text is the insight it gives into Schwaller's broader theories of biological and spiritual transmutation. Nature Word makes the startling claim that there is a fixed alchemical salt, an immortal mineral nucleus that neither fire nor putrefaction can destroy, residing in the human femur. Yeah, I said that twice now, but you can understand that this is a very, very deep thing that this man is supposedly figured out. With unusual specificity, Schwaller held that the incorruptible salt in the human femur is the mineral register upon which the most vital moments of human consciousness could be permanently inscribed. This salt or nucleus was in comparison the chromosome, extremely fixed or even indestructible. Schwaller regarded it as more permanent than DNA and accorded it a key role in his esoteric theory of evolution, Genesis. Contrary to the Darwinian theory, where only the characteristics of the species are able to be preserved through genetic transmission, Schwaller maintained that the fixed salt located in the femur is the precise mechanism by which individual characteristics, the vital modes of consciousness, are able to be preserved and transmitted beyond the death of the individual. This salt was therefore central to the alchemical process of rebirth, palingenesis. Within the wider framework of Schwaller's cosmology, in which material genesis is conceived as the visible index of the evolution of consciousness, the alchemical salt forms the magnet that draws primordial matter through the existential vehicles of the mineral, vegetable, animal, and human kingdoms towards the ultima materia, or telos, of spiritual concretion. As such, it formed the hidden link, the invisible bond in the chain of continuity, in the otherwise apparently discontinuous process in which the generation and corruption of evolving forms is situated. In 1956, Schwaller published Le Roi de la Théocratie Pharaonique, The King of Pharaonic Theocracy, a work which, among other things, traces the deviation and distortion of Egyptian consciousness through Greek rationality, highlighting the Egyptian rather than Greek basis of the intellectual miracle that transformed antique civilization. In this work, Schwaller reveals important insights into the alchemical process of qualitative exaltation, a term he compares to the occurrence of teratological proliferation, mutational phenomena in plants, points to the images of the proliferous lotuses depicted on the botanical gardens of Thutmose III at Karnak. He reveals how authentic alchemical mutation emerges not from the purification of the material body of an entity, but from the intensification of its spirit or consciousness. In short, consciousness shapes form, and it was precisely the qualitative exaltations of consciousness that were registered in the immortal mineral remains, the fixed salt, and carried over between kingdoms and species, thus forming the Ariadne thread in de Lubicz's esoteric theory of evolution. It was in Plan de Grâce, however, that Schwaller finally published his 3-volume magnus opus, The Temple in Man, the magisterial synthesis of his many years of on-site study in the temples of ancient Egypt. On the eve of Le Temple, Schwaller presented some papers at the Congrès des Symbolistes in Paris, just after his chef d'oeuvre appeared, a Belgian-American by the name of André van den Broek, encountered Schwaller's work and, over a period of 18 months, became his last and perhaps most important disciple. The account that van den Broek left of this period, 1959-60, published some 27 years later on the centenary of Schwaller's birth. Alchemy, Hermetic, Occult, Political and Private Aspects of R.A. Schwaller de Lubicz, 1987, remains the single most important memoir of Schwaller de Lubicz to date. The final book published by de Lubicz was Propos sur esotérisme et symbole, on esotericism and symbol, 1960, a short text actually written during the Christmas of 1947 and dedicated to his friends from the Luxor group. Propos sur distills many of the themes explored in the wealth of notes and unpublished papers that Schwaller wrote throughout the 1940s, and remains one of his most concise meditations on metaphysics, containing specific insights into the hermetic mystery of salt. Death at Plan de Grâce. In his final years, Schwaller made a brief trip to his birthplace in Alsatia, and And on 7th of December 1961, René Aor Schwaller de Lubicz died with the destruction of form. He writes, "The fixed and the volatile are separated. This is what we call death. At this time of separation, the energetic influences of the environment, such as light or sound, are able to act and create impressions, the form no longer being an obstacle." Schwaller was survived by his wife by 1 year, and his final moments were recorded in her biography, Aor, Absolved to the Intelligence of the Heart. Schwaller encountered and overcame the mental presence that he acknowledged as his lifelong enemy. "I knew he was the obstacle, but I had never recognized all his tricks, all the forms that he could take in order to deflect me from the path." This vanquishing of mental consciousness was, for Schwaller, no less than victory over the primordial source of doubt and fear. Symbolically, equivalent to slaying the dragon and to gaining gnosis of the language of birds, Schwaller's final conquest allegedly enabled him to progressively enter a radiant state of light for over 3 hours, after which he passed away. Consistent with his life's philosophy, he entered the invisible light of Aor, of which René Schwaller was but a refraction. For each and every form is merely passing instant, a transient aspect of the divine light, he wrote in his posthumously published note. This is why things only die in their form, and why every death is the source of new life. Only the divine light is deathless, because it is bornless, and therefore fixed and eternal. Here he is. This old man seems to be very wise, considering this read. Aor at Plan de Grace, 1960. In 1955, Raoul Jahan described Schwaller as bearing an astonishing resemblance to Einstein. He recalls how for 3 hours he spoke, answered our questions, and smoked 3 packets of gold flake without interrupting himself. Yeah, that was a way to go. Yeah, this is a very interesting read, I have to say. I'll just leave it at that. There's nothing more I can say about it. A man dedicated, scientist, trying to figure out life, trying to understand it from... Like, this is not just looking at matter and trying to figure it out. This is going past matter. And I feel like scientists today, when they're looking at matter and they don't see a soul, like Brian Cox, it loses its value of being a scientist. There's nothing you can explore except something in a microscope that seems to be alive. Yeah. But thank you so much for watching. And I wish you the most beautiful present moment. It is time to shine. So, let's glow.
Gilli Pong.
Analyses.